Good evening, boys and girls. My name is Elliot Morris, and let me tell you, everything is fine. Honestly, it might seem like the world is on fire and we're slowly crawling towards our inevitable end, whether it be nuclear disaster, civil war, climate change. Oh look, a royal wedding. That's nice. Everything is fine. Tonight, I want to talk to you about Brexit. Yes, the hot dumpster fire that is Britain's exit from the European Union. It's been 3 years since this country's journey into chaos began, but my God, does it feel like a lifetime. I mean, does anyone remember when Labour's biggest problem was a bacon sandwich? Nowadays, the Tories could, try and deport an entire generation of people and no one will bat an eyelid. Only that actually happened. Does anyone remember? No, because it was buried under the avalanche of chaos and scandal that is British politics. But how did we get here? Why do we now live in a world where the Brexit secretary changes more frequently than Katy Perry's hairstyle? Well, boys and girls, let's go on an adventure way back to the year 2015. The Conservatives won their first majority in decades. Queen Elizabeth becomes the longest reigning queen ever, and gay marriage was legalised in Ireland. But there was a muttering of something else, a deep, dark murmuring within government. A small group of Conservative MPs were unhappy with the state of Britain's membership within the European Union, and as such began to put pressure on David Cameron to do something about it. So what did he do? After realising that this whole issue was far too complex for just one man to deal with it, Mr. Cameron, in his infinite goddamn wisdom, decided to let the people of the United Kingdom decide. I want everyone to just stop and understand that this is where all of our trouble began. Cameron decided that an issue too complicated for someone whose job it is to understand would be perfect for a referendum. Economists couldn't fully predict the implications of Brexit on the UK. But sure, let's pose this question to the British public. The same people who decided that Mrs. Brown's Boys was the best comedy show in 2017. Mrs. Brown's Boys! A show which is 95% penis jokes and 5% fake tits! So, Cameron announces a referendum and the race to chaos begins. The campaign started off fairly unassumingly. 2 official campaigns were announced. In the red corner, we had Vote Leave, representing the Brexiteers. And in the blue corner, we have Stronger in Europe, representing the Remainers. What followed was a farce comparable only to that one episode of The Chuckle Brothers where Paul begins a scaremongering campaign and Barry finds himself driving an oddly misleading red bus. Because that was one of the biggest frustrations of this referendum process. Both sides were run by idiots. Remain were complacent, believing that the best offence was a good cup of tea, whilst the Leave campaign began their campaign of exaggerated figures, illegal overspending, and that goddamn red bus. Are you kidding me? Why is this so often ignored? It was a giant red bus, £350 million. Are you having a laugh? This is the biggest load of horse. I've been informed that in the interest of impartiality, I do have to state that the statement on the bus was only hypothetical and they did not promise £350 million to the NHS. But let's skip forward past the rest of the campaign before I give myself an aneurysm. Referendum day came and went and took with it the value of the pound, as the very day after the referendum, the pound dropped to a 31-year low. David Cameron resigned, the Brexit bus mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Now look, as far as starts go, it wasn't ideal. It's kind of like starting a marathon, only to realise that your iPod is broken, you're not wearing any shoes, and you've actually been training for an egg and spoon race. Anyway, in this crucial time when our country needed leadership the most, what happened? Yeah, everyone quit. I mean, at this point, should we really even be expecting the bare minimum from our government? But what the hell? I guess I'm an optimist. And so ensued a Conservative leadership race, which would decide who would be entrusted with taking our country through the Brexit process. Only it was less of a race and more of a stumble to the finish. Before the campaigning had even begun, 4 MPs, including Boris Johnson, Jeremy Hunt and Nicky Morgan, announced their intention to run and then promptly withdrew. The campaign then saw every other candidate withdraw before the final vote. Theresa May ran unopposed. Not a single other member of the Conservative Party wanted to touch Brexit with a 10-foot barge pole. Do you want to know why? Because even from the start, they all knew it would be an absolute f***ing disaster. Nevertheless, Theresa May carried on, knowing she was doomed from the start. And I just want to spend some time highlighting this point. She was doomed from the start, as was any politician that would have taken on the task. I mean, let's think about this. 52% voted leave and 48% voted remain. So already, you're upsetting 48% of the population, no matter what kind of Brexit is achieved. Then, if we look at the 52% who voted leave, it would be impossible to please all of them. And do you know why? Because the question was too damn vague. Pretty much every single person who voted leave had a different idea of what Brexit meant to them. The only thing they voted for was to leave the European Union, which means that Theresa May could have done anything from shut our borders and cut all communication with Brussels to changing the colour of our passports, and it would have technically counted as leaving the European Union. So I once met a man who wanted Brexit to happen overnight, just like that, cut all ties with Brussels. Whereas my driving instructor, he voted to leave because he didn't like the fact that the EU had control over our driving regulations. He still wanted to be a part of the single market, he still wanted freedom of movement, but he voted leave. Now, you could argue that this is anecdotal, but the fact of the matter is that the referendum question was vague, rushed, and poorly thought out, and I'll be damned if that isn't a metaphor for this whole process. So, we're now roughly 6 months into Brexit, and we've already had our currency crash, a total overhaul of cabinet, and we still can't find that bloody bus. But you might be asking, where were Labour in this time of chaos? I mean, surely this was a prime chance for the opposition to scrutinise the Conservative Party for weak leadership. Well, unfortunately, Jeremy Corbyn was busy facing no confidence votes and party infighting at a time when the Conservatives had all of their leaders run away into the shadows. Labour still managed to be the weakest party in government. And when Corbyn wasn't busy fighting his own party, he was spending his time in Parliament swapping insults with Theresa May instead of actually motivating productive debate. This is the problem with adversarial politics. Instead of trying to work together to find the best solution, politicians are instead more bothered with putting each other down with their sick burns, when in reality, I couldn't give a monkey's whether or not my Prime Minister knows more your mum jokes than Jeremy Corbyn. I just want her to actually lead the goddamn country. Anyway, let's get back to the story. The country is still chugging along slowly, preparations are being made, crack teams of negotiators are being assembled. Oh, no, Tom, you're right. When I said crack team, I meant David Davis, the man who couldn't negotiate his way out of an IKEA showroom. Then, out of nowhere, prompted by literally no one, at 11 p.m. on March 29th, 2017, Theresa May triggered Article 50. For those of you who aren't aware what Article 50 is, it's the clause which stipulates that any member can leave the EU. From when it is triggered, the country has 2 years to negotiate their exit deal before they are no longer a member of the Union. Kicked out, regardless of the status of their negotiation. You might be asking, why would Theresa May trigger so long before she was ready to leave? Her cabinet hadn't even decided on what they wanted Brexit to mean. That wouldn't be decided 9 months until the deadline, for your information. So why on earth was she so premature? Well, to be frank, I haven't got a clue. I can think of literally not a single logical reason why she would trigger it so early. It's like you're locked in a room, right? And you want to get out. And in the room you have a set of lockpicks and a bomb. Now, you know that the bomb would get you out of the room, but you're not exactly sure how much of you would make it out. The lockpicks, on the other hand, well, you don't know how to use them, but maybe, with some time, you could work it out. So what do? Well, if you're Mrs. May, you yeet those lockpicks out of the window and start that countdown. So, the countdown has begun. We have 2 years to put together a proposed divorce bill and take it to the EU. The EU then have to agree to this bill, but if they don't, then we need to renegotiate a compromise, bring it back to the UK, check it with Parliament, check this new bill, then, and only then, can we safely leave. So can anyone at home guess what it is that Theresa May did next? That's right, she called a general election! A 6-week-long democratic process to maybe choose a new government. 'Cause sure, let's have a 6-week distraction from this whole Brexit malarkey. It's not like there's an important deadline or anything. Now look, from May's perspective, I kind of get it. The Labour Party was looking incredibly weak. And in theory, for any, semi-competent party, that would have been a landslide, resulting in a large majority and far more power regarding the Brexit negotiations. But did any of you spot the key word I used there? That's right, I said for any competent party. And as we've already seen, the Conservatives at this moment in time were anything but. You see, what happened was Labour realised that it was probably impossible for Labour to win a majority. So what they could try and do was take power from the Tories and make their majority weaker. They then started this campaign by producing the most optimistic manifesto since Karl Marx said, "Hey guys, wouldn't it be great if everyone earns the same amount of money?" They promised to end tuition fees, higher taxes for the rich, universal credit, a boost to the NHS, and a nationwide search for that goddamn red bus! Huh? No, they didn't? No? Okay. No, apparently they didn't actually promise that last one. Sorry. That's on me. As you can imagine, this got the Conservative Party pretty scared. So they devised the most ingenious counterattack since going over the top. They decided to run a campaign with Theresa May at the figurehead, filling this campaign with her strong and stable leadership and focusing it around her personality. Yeah, I'm not kidding. They thought Theresa Wheatfield May had that X factor that they were looking for in a charismatic leader. As you can imagine, this went down an absolute treat, and the Conservatives ended up losing their majority. This then forced them to make a £1 billion coalition deal with the DUP in order to form a government. So, here we are then, a year since the referendum, and the country has seen 2 leadership races, 1 general election, and still no sign of an exit deal. But good news, the official negotiation process was about to begin. In June 2017, Theresa May waved a teary goodbye to David Davis, our Brexit negotiator. Unfortunately, that's where I'm going to have to leave it for this week, as we've run out of time. Can you believe that? It's been all this time, and we still haven't even managed to briefly cover the absolute shambles that is Brexit. I mean, it was just mistake after flounder after blunder, again and again and again. I mean, these are people who've devoted their lives to leadership and governance of this country. And do you know what it comes down to? Greed and incompetence. Incompetent people saying and doing whatever it takes to get the power. But when it's put in front of them, they run away. Yes, I'm talking about you, Boris. You blonde buffoon. I know you know where the bus is, Boris. Tell me where you hid the bus. It's your fault, Boris. I know you know where they hid the bus. Boris, tell me where the bus is, Boris. You hid the bus. You hid the bus. The Boris bus. The Boris bus, Tom. Tom, the Boris bus.